state, and then we'll find your nameplate. It's wonderful that the organizers of the forum this year decided to focus our attention on economics and the link between the economy and the development of infrastructure and the technology in the internet. We are the RIGF Association of Electronic Communications. We believe in the subject matter as well. It's one of our fundamental activities. So we decided to organize this 15-minute panel discussion as a way of introducing this topic to the Russian Internet Governance Forum. We hope you agree with us that this is an important matter. Economy, the internet economy becomes a decisive factor in the modern world, and it's something to be taken into account when planning business activities, technical activities, even political activities. I want to warn you that this panel discussion, we do not want to talk about politics. We only want to focus on figures, on technology, and the economic effect of the internet. So that's why I want to introduce to you the speakers that we have gathered to discuss this topic. Sergey Plуготаренко, that's me, I'm from RIGF. Alexey Basov represents Rostelecom. Mail Gave represents Ozon.ru Holding. Kirill Varlamov is from the Internet Initiative Development Fund. Mikhail Yakushov is from ICANN, but you know this gentleman already. And Ruslan Gatarov from the Council of Federation. And from the Governor's Office of... He is the advisor of the governor of the Chelyabinsk. Ruslan, we're so used to your title in the Council of Federation. It's very difficult for us to switch to your new position, to the title of your new position. So everything that we want to discuss here, internet is the blood vessels of the offline economy. It feeds the life of the community. Is it true, and has it already happened in Russia after the 20 years of the internet development here? We have a presentation, and I would like now this presentation to appear on the screen. This will be our starting point. And this plenary session will flow into a press conference, so there will be no break between this plenary session and the press conference dedicated to the 20th anniversary of the .ru. Can someone please help me leaf through the slides, because my clicker doesn't seem to work. I have already introduced to you the speakers who we invited. Alexey Volin will join us around noon, and Ruslan Gatarov has agreed to join us early in the morning. That's why his picture is not on the slide. So to introduce this discussion, let's look at the current figures of the internet economy. What is internet economy? We did a research of this phenomenon at the end of last year, and we realized that at the end of 2012, and that's how we do our measurements every year at the end of the year, according to our estimates, the total value of this economy is about 1.3% of the GDP. The growth on 2011 is around 39%. We expect that the growth at the end of 2013 will be around 26%. We are measuring internet markets. It means that the total contribution to the GDP again is about 1.3%. And this is the statistics for 2012. If we extrapolate our estimates of 2012 on to 2013, 2014, well, our economy today generates about 1 trillion of rubles in the 14 RUNET markets. We can also calculate the internet-dependent markets, the markets that cannot exist without the internet, and their overall contribution to GDP is around 9%. It's 8.5, 5.2 trillion rubles, and this is really significant. It's a tangible. 10 years ago, these numbers were negligible. We couldn't even measure them, but now they're pretty visible on the landscape, and we employ about 1.3 million persons in the internet industry. For the first time this year, we attempted to review the internet development scenarios, and our analysts defined 4 scenarios. Right now, we stick to the stabilization scenario, although we do have the conservative scenario and the innovative scenario as the endpoints of the scale, and there is also the crisis scenario. And the key thing that our analysts calculated, even in accordance with the crisis scenario, the internet is expected to grow at the rate of about 3 to 6%, but we believe that actually, in actual terms, the internet industry will grow at the rate of 15 to 20%, and certain markets like video advertisement, for instance, is growing 100% a year, and I think that this is impressive and is good, and we should strive to maintain that rate of growth. And now let's look at different segments. The segments that, from my perspective, have an impact on the internet economy and that become dependent on the internet economy more and more. The first segment is infrastructure. That's everything related to internet access, addressing, providing services to private individuals and companies, and the public sector. Government services. I want to start a discussion with Alexey Basov from Rostelecom. Alexey, do you think that the infrastructure is decisive? Is a decisive matter for the economy? Is internet dependent on infrastructure, and the other way around? While Alexey is speaking, I would like to put this slide on the screen. We have some figures here, but Alexey, again, we hope to hear your opinion, and this is just the background to your discussion. You don't need to refer. You can even disagree with what's written on the slide. Hi, colleagues. Good morning. Well, it's wonderful that I have the right to disagree, but looking at these numbers, I feel like they are accurate, or at least they match our impressions of the market. The internet infrastructure, just like any other segment of the economy, believes that they play the decisive role. Internet companies believe that they own the internet. Telecom companies believe that they own the internet. The economy cannot exist without its infrastructure, and infrastructure is useless without economic relations in it. We see that infrastructure companies and internet providers merge as years go by. The borders between them become more vague. Major corporations, they start building cable networks, Wi-Fi networks. These are the corporations that have never dealt in internet economy before. There are corporations that start entering the services market, and they provide the services via the internet and the internet infrastructure. Just like national telecom companies like Deutsche Telekom or British Telecom or Orange, the former France Telecom, we cooperate with them very closely, and we follow the same path to destiny. We are all considering new growth drivers. We are looking for new growth points. I believe that in about 5 years, and I think that 5 years is a comfortable time horizon. It's something that we can play on. 5 years, the analysts can build their projections over that period. I think that ISPs and telecom companies will exist no more, and it will make no sense to distinguish between them. It will become a historic notion. Many analysts believe that this is a precursor of some apocalypse, that the telecom segment is encroaching on the internet resources market. No, I don't think it's a danger. I don't think it's a threat. It's just that the evolution of the technology and the economy and transformation of the large corporations into companies of a new type. I don't think that there exists a word that can describe that new phenomenon yet. The analysts will need to think about how we call these companies from now on. And what's happening in this country is no different from what is happening in other international markets, especially in what concerns the internet infrastructure. It's wonderful that the government, as represented by the competent departments, provides administrative pressure and generates an impetus for the ISPs to develop and to the telecom companies to develop the network. The cables laid across the country stimulate the growth of pure internet economy and internet-dependent businesses. Small businesses, middle-sized, large corporations, they are involved more and more effectively into that industry. Jointly, they produce, 10% of the GDP, as we have seen on one of the previous slides. Jobs are created, services are provided, products are produced, all owing to the internet. So all these boring figures of internet penetration and GPON and optics and all of the technical terms that inundate many of the conferences, they are important because these are the efforts that bring new users to the internet. In large cities, more than 70, if I'm not mistaken, more than 70% of the population is covered by the internet. So we can expect that internet will grow in the future through smaller cities and rural areas where the rate of penetration is still rather low. So if you're following this discussion, you know that Rostelecom and other large telecom companies are looking into this idea of bringing the internet to low-rise buildings, cottages, townhouses. Today, we provide services to 10 million households by way of advertisement. By the end of 2016, we plan to have covered about 30 million households. A household that's not just one person, that's at least 2 persons, 3 persons on average. So we want to provide broadband to all high-rise buildings and also to a lot of small-rise buildings. The Ministry of Telecom believes that we shouldn't stop, and today, together with the Ministry, we are discussing a special program for ensuring internet access throughout the country, especially again in low-rise housing. And this is this scenario that we are considering, and we hope that it will enable us to make a leap in the internet penetration. Well, it's a matter of price, isn't it? Quality is a matter of quality and price and availability, of course. So thank you very much for your efforts. For all the participants in this audience, I want to warn you, so if we have time at the end of the plenary session, then we will have a Q&A session, or you can also stay here for the press conference bit, and you can ask your questions then. So if, and also I want to address the panelists, if I'm asking questions specifically to particular panelist, but you feel like you also have a contribution to make, please do not hesitate, just pick up the microphone and share your views. Another question that I want to raise is our domains. The successful Russian domains are our pride. We remember the .rf campaign. We know that it is a successful domain name. Mikhail Yakushev from ICANN, could you please give us an overview of what lies ahead of the Russian domain space from the international perspective, or from the perspective of the Russian business? Because Mikhail is an expert on this. For a long time, Mikhail used to chair the Council of the Russian Association of Electronic Communications, and he is very much immersed into the internet economy issues. But now he has this international perspective as well. So what is the future of the domain space in Russia?
Thanks. Well, I think Russia is facing a bright future. I don't have any doubt about that. I'd like to remind you of one point. I remember very well the Internet Economics conferences 12 to 15 years ago, when people said it's the most important thing to wait for at least 10% of the population to join the Internet. A lot of people thought that 10% would be sort of a breakthrough. After this breakthrough, there will be nothing but the internet. In the internet will be everything, and so on and so forth. Now, with hindsight, we know that at least 100% of the, active population of the Russian Federation are already on the internet. They are already online, and the changes that have progressively affected our lives. Well, no one thinks those changes have been some sort of a breakthrough, but in fact, they have been a breakthrough. With our mobile phone, we can travel in strange cities, we can pay for things, we can get any information, and so on and so forth. Very honestly, let's confess that 15 years ago, we didn't even dream about this. Well, we dreamt about different things, but we got much more than we dreamt of. So, if we try to predict what's going to happen in another 15 years, very possibly our forecast or our prediction will not be optimistic enough. So I'd like to talk to you about ICANN's vision of the future, of what the Russian registrar is working on. In our territory, about a dozen Russian and international registrars and regulators of the first level, top-level domains managers. .ru was the first Russian domain zone. Cyrillic .rf was also very successful. The .moskva or .moscow domain zones have appeared. And I think you know that ICANN makes a great campaign to open up new top-level domains. Just phase 1 of this program includes 1,500 domains. About 200 have already been switched on. For the first time, we're getting foreigners in our territory. A .online, a .site, and .catholic domain names have been registered in Russia. They do not belong to Russian organizations, but they also work in Cyrillic. They also work in the Russian language. So this trend is something that's going to change the domain name landscape altogether. There is a big discussion about that. The incumbent registrars will face additional challenges, but the economy is developing. The consumption of internet service is becoming more comprehensive and complicated. So I think that both new and old domain zones will still be growing because the pie is growing in such a big way, in such a fast way, then that everyone in this business will have their own piece. What's also important and frequently overlooked is that progressing from IPv4 to IPv6 and opening up 10 to the power of 28 new internet addresses, we are technologically opening up the door from the internet of people to the internet of things, making an IP address available for your car, for your fridge, for your dog, for your cat. Your fridge will be talking to the local store that you've run out of milk, and so on and so forth. So I think when we get together at the 10th RIGF, I think we will be able to assess this Internet of Things and which breakthroughs it is going to lead us into. And last but not least, I'd like to talk about the infrastructure. We are not actively involved in the infrastructure, but we can buy pieces of infrastructure from operators that own and manage it. However, the network addresses and the network address organizations that work in the world, and that includes not only ICANN, but also RIPE NCC and others, anyone can be included in the management process, looking for the optimal ways to increase the economic value generated by the Internet. In this connection, I'd like to draw your attention to the recent announcement by the US government that the Internet infrastructure management issues will be passed over to the international level rather than the US national level. And of course, jokingly but very importantly, I think we will enrich a lot of translators around the world because the Internet is generating a lot of terms that are natively understandable only by English speakers. Even Internet governance is not very well understood in Russia, and just take the word multi-stakeholderism that, of course, requires very highly qualified interpreters and translators to translate into different national languages. And there is another term that comes from the US government, and I don't know how to translate this into Russian. So the US government is passing over stewardship of the Internet. So we will have to pay millions of dollars to translators and interpreters to make sure that everything our United States and English-speaking colleagues invent be translated into many different languages. Thanks for this very concise but very tightly packed presentation. Sinology, Internet of Things, politics, and economics. Well, you have laid a lot of things on the table. Our plate is full now. Now I'd like to pull you back into the realm of Internet economics, and I'd like to pass the next floor to the representative of the world of electronic commerce, because e-commerce and e-payment is something that represents a big portion of the Internet pie in terms of the value and in terms of the growth rates. So, what lies ahead? Can we actually count on maintaining and retaining this growth rate that we're seeing now? Mael Gave, ozon.ru. Well, first of all, congratulations, happy birthday, and so on. Well, I think we are looking into a very, very bright future. E-commerce and e-payment is growing in a tremendous way. Depending on the point of view, it's between 15 and 30% per year. And right now, online retail represents about 2% of the entire Russian retail industry. 2% is the point where the United States was back in 2004. Of course, this means that we have a lot of room for enlargement. just not looking at the United States, let's look at my country, France. In France, online retail represents 4% of the entire retail industry. China, also 4%. England, 10%. So I think this means that in Russia there is a great potential for growth of the online retail industry. We have talked that internet and internet-dependent businesses employ up to 1.5 million people. E-commerce is a big part of all that. Ozon.ru employs directly more than 2,000 people. They are on our staff. However, we also sort of indirectly employ at least 8,000 people who work with our partners, and some of them work exclusively for us. Without the internet, we can't do our business. We have physical presence in the real world throughout our order distribution centers and order dispensers, but we cannot process transactions without the internet. So we are always happy when you say that you're going to connect much more people. Please, when you connect them, just remember that it is much better to shop on the internet if you've got broadband connections. So broadband is going to be a priority. We also are aware of the importance of government efforts to regulate the internet. A lot of internet users don't see it as a very popular topic, but no market can exist without any regulation. So last year has seen a lot of debates and a lot of decisions made on the regulation of the electronic content. Even though I cannot say all issues have been resolved satisfactorily, Ozon.ru thinks that it's a great step ahead. Getting back to the United States, back in 1998, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act adopted in the United States was not popular, but it created a big market for legal intellectual products. And we think that something like that must be adopted also in Russia. It is a great illusion saying that the internet can exist just in thin air with absolute disconnect from the real life things. So we welcome these efforts, and of course we welcome any efforts to develop the physical infrastructure. We need good internet, but we also need good highways, good railways, a highly packed network of airports to deliver the goods. We can see the signs of development. We want this development to be faster. Of course, we want better roads and we want them faster, but we see that Russia is developing in the right direction. And of course, one piece of infrastructure that is needed to move the e-commerce forward is payment. In Russia, a lot of goods are paid cash on delivery. And this is a very specific point of the Russian financial system. Ozon.ru receives 75% of its revenue in cash. This means that a lot of people are anxious about using their private data from their banking cards online, but at the same time, we face a lot of security systems that are not very practical from the point of view of the consumer, and some banking cards are just not cannot be used on the internet. So there are still a lot of roadblocks. We therefore welcome Sberbank's efforts to increase its usability on the internet and integration with e-commerce, and we will always support all the developments toward that point on the Russian market, which is one of the most active markets in the world. Well, I thank you. I like your presentations always. It is very important to hear from a French business person that Russia can be a place for a successful and honest business. Of course, it's also important to hear that we don't just have good figures, but we have good atmosphere in the Russian business. Another important point about the internet is investment in .ru. Venture investors like ICT, they like to invest in startups, and so on. Russia has relatively good figures about that. So I'd like to ask Kirill Varlamov, who represents the Internet Initiatives Development Fund, to talk about this, because he's a specialist and an expert. So what can you say about the 2013 landscape, and what can you say about the future that lies ahead? Well, I have my own slide here. Thanks for the introduction. Yes, I think you should start with figures. The market of IT investment is growing. There was one report that suggested there has been no growth last year. However, according to our figures, there has been growth. And I will not read out the figures, but if you're interested, you will see, and the figures, I think, talk for themselves. Our fund is about early stages, seed or pre-seed even. And from last year, from the data of last year, we came to an understanding that about 5,000 Russian startups are developing pretty actively and pretty sustainably. The situation has changed last year. I would say that the biggest change is that the companies that are in the pre-seed stage have become much more mature. Now they are aware what it means that they are present in the pre-seed stage or in the seed stage. The maturity of investors has grown as well. When we talk about this startup industry, we need to talk about an industry. An industry suggests that there is a comprehensive approach. It's not just a sort of accidental get-together when there are no rules, there is no guidance, and actually no one understands anything about nothing. An industry suggests manageable risks, understandable percentage of failure, and so on. So I think we need to look at this industry as an ecosystem, which must include acceleration programs, investor relations. Investor relations are important because we don't have enough angels, and more importantly, we don't have enough knowledgeable angels who know what to do and how to do that. We have analyzed the global venture markets and understood that the United States market is the only market where people invest in future shareholder value. It doesn't work in Germany, it doesn't work in Israel, and of course it doesn't work in Russia. So investors who want to grow a company in order to sell it to someone should not think it will work in Russia. Well, you should think about that if you target $1 billion value and the US stock market. What works in Russia is the dividend model. You can claim dividends up to 50%. This is still a very high margin and therefore high dividend market. I think my colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first important thing. The second important thing that we came to understand is that there are a lot of development funds, there are a lot of development institutions in Russia created by the government or together with the government or by the private sector. And what we need right now is more coordination and more understanding of the consequences of steps you're making. So, for instance, you're having a contest, and For instance, you've got some winners in that contest. So what happens to those winners? And most interestingly, what happens to the 95% of people who have not won a single contest? Who's going to support them? Who's going to teach them how to win the next contest? So what our development fund is about is trying to understand what happens before an investment is awarded and what happens after. Another important point is managing relationships with strategic customers, with large businesses, I mean as large as Rostelecom, for instance. There are some internet services that can exist on a B2C level. But there are quite a few Russian corporations that have grown to an international level, and therefore they face international challenges and competitors, and they also need some internet services that would help them grow and develop. So we see as our strategic task the integration and translation of growth from the B2C to, well, also B2C business to corporations network, and integrating our startups into the corporate world. All right, thanks, Carol. The next item which I'd like to put on the table, not very much discussed, but because there will be a lot of people trying to discuss it, and we'll do that later, is the internet stuff. So companies that are internet dependent employ 1.3 million people. According to assessments, industries that are dependent on the internet employ up to 5 million people. And we need to create conditions for these people to stay in Russia, to work in Russia, and to create some more in Russia. I think this is something that's important to all those people present. Possibly, it would be a good idea to leave this to the end, because this is a very juicy subject. And now I'd like to talk about one point why we have Ruslan here, why Ruslan has joined us here. I'd like to ask you a very important question. The Russian internet community is discussing right now, well, very internally and very quietly, the strategy of development of the Russian internet. We're not talking about this loudly and publicly, because we have seen that 2013 has become a year in which the internet appeared very much on the government radar. And so far, we have not talked to the government very much. So without understanding the global picture in Russia and abroad, it is very hard now to strategically plan the industry's development. Do you think, in the current Russian and international situation, this development is possible, and whether politics should also have its finger in this pie? So, should we consider economics, politics, or just government regulation as the most important subject? Well, that's some question to answer. In fact, I thank you for this question. It's very interesting. Economy cannot exist in disconnect from politics. Politics can exist in disconnect from economics, but not for a very long time. So a strategy must consider economic and market-based methods. But of course, any strategy must have politics in the rearview mirror. I have already said that until recently, foreign companies in Russia had been afraid of the Russian government, that the Russian government will choke them to death. Right now, they are still afraid of the Russian government, that the Russian government will create its own analogs of their businesses and infrastructures if it can, but now they are also afraid of their mother countries where they are registered. Until recently, they were not aware of the second factor, and I think this factor is going to affect the market very much. Well, and what's your recommendation? How can we consider it as we plan, as we plan our targets, or product strategies, or product pipeline, or whatever. Well, Sergey, we could not count this factor in our calculations, but the agreement I have already mentioned, and Mikhail Yakushev has already said that now the United States is ready to transfer the stewardship of the internet to someone, but so far they have not said to whom they are going to transfer the stewardship. So a situation in which ICANN or another entity that's going to steward the internet, it must not be a national organization. A lot of people argue that such an entity should not be governed by the United Nations, because the United Nations is an organization that does not take decisions fast. But where should it be located? Switzerland? Well, with all my respect, I don't think that Switzerland is the best venue, because at least the Swiss have opened up their banks to the Americans. And people who have some money, they don't want to show to the American IRS, they have transferred all the money to Asia. But locating this new ICANN in Asia, well, I don't know about that. So the United Nations is very proactively participating now in this discussion. I know this from our permanent representative in the United Nations and so on. Now let's talk about what a strategy really is. I have already talked very much and at length about the dangers to private data. And I think it's okay that this scandal is sort of being swept under the carpet by Ukraine and so on and so forth. But private data is going to be important for the economics of the internet. Do we really trust the government to know about our relationships with our doctors, with our attorneys, with our friends, relations, and all the other enjoyments that the internet can bring into our lives? Are we really protected? And protected from whom? This is something that we need to factor in any strategy that we write. We need to factor in as well the likelihood of successfully negotiating the independence of our financial platforms from other countries. We need to factor in the likelihood that laws in this country are adopted following a really broad public discussion, like we did with the recent laws in the Council of Federation. The instruments and the conventions that have been made by the Council of Europe, I don't criticize them. They were written by true professionals. But when I look at what is written by the deputies of the European of the PSC, well, it's beyond any criticism. Robert Schlegel, who's been in our delegation to PSC for several years, he just says, I cannot read this. And these are the speeches and these are the presentations and reports that a lot of people try to impose on us. So all these factors, I understand that they are boring and they are complex, but we have to factor them in. Last year, the government has put the internet on its radar, very much in the center of its radar. And what I can tell you is that in 2014, the government is going to zoom in. Yes, we're feeling that already. Thank you very much. And just another 2 years down the road, now the number of Russian lawmakers that want to regulate the internet, well, there are a lot of them, but they are not aware of the structure of the internet, what they are regulating, and how it works. There are quite a few such lawmakers, and they have a right to discuss those things, and they have a right to sort of draft certain bills. Many of those bills remain bills and are not passed into law just because those deputies don't understand what they're regulating. But in 2016, for instance, there will be a lot of people in the Russian parliament with true awareness of the industry, with true expert knowledge of the industry, and they will be regulating the industry for real. So, will they be friendly to you, or will there be representing some other people and circles and communities? That depends on you now. Okay, Ruslan. This is what you hear from an advisor to the Federation Council and Vice Governor of the Chelyabinsk region. So, if I'm not mistaken, Ruslan, you are advising us to start meddling in politics and trying to work more proactively with the government and with the regulators to become part of them in the future. So I'd like to put on the table for the last 5 to 7 minutes of the plenary meeting one item which has become more and more interesting over the years and, well, which is better and better understood, I think. RUNET, as an environment, as a realm, looks so special that a lot of people would talk about it as the national treasure of the Russian Federation, like space, like ballet and things. Why do we think that way? We think that way because all the mainstays are present in Russia. We have a national search engine, we have 2 national social networks, we have national e-commerce, and all of them maintain more than 50% of the local audience, and they actually do not surrender to Western services, which may be more advanced, but Russian services still very successfully maintain their share of the audience. So I think it's something special about Russia that we have generated such services. And secondly, if you look at the Russian language as a language of the internet, you will see that much more people read internet in Russian than live in the Russian Federation. A lot of people have trouble handwriting, but they don't have any trouble typing on the internet. So Cyrillic and Russian language as an internet language are also some sort of a national treasure. So I'd like to ask you, all of you, just one question. Do you really think that this should be driven home to the international platforms, to the government, to regulators, and lobbied for? And secondly, do you think Russian IT will still lead and drive the way inside the country? I'd like to start with Ruslan now, from the right to the left. So, Ruslan, do you think RUNET is Russia's national treasure, and what will happen to the Russian mainstays in the coming years? Will they still lead the way on the Russian internet?
As to the national treasure, I think that for Russia, internet is a bigger national treasure than it is for other countries. The government takes good care of the internet, and you have agreed with that position. You said that you can feel that care. E-government, e-payments, communication between authorities, all of this is internet. The Ministry of Healthcare is becoming part of the internet. We are moving towards having some kind of a digital ID. We are ready of fingerprinting. But that's not the end of it. We will also be taking photographs of the iris, a 3D iris picture. Ruslan, you are so specific. Yes, one way or another. I want to say that the internet is truly a national treasure, and the players such as Yandex, of course, they will stay. Rostelecom, if Rostelecom changes, it can only change to become more efficient. Telecom will stay if it becomes more efficient in tackling the problems and reaching the objectives that it faces. In the last 5-7 years, large corporations like Rostelecom, and I never knew it until, say, last year, I never knew that Rostelecom is an active player in the healthcare market. I don't think that many of you are aware of the fact, and that's how things are done. Not just Rostelecom, but other large corporations got all the big budgets from the government, and then they build the systems themselves, or they bought the systems, but the outcome was always far from perfect, and that way they killed the market. Half of the healthcare, the medical products market is dead now. Part of the market was split by smaller companies. They shared the IT budgets, and all other companies just disappeared. And of course, if they keep going the same fashion, they will dominate the market in the future. But is it good for the country? I'm not sure. Okay, Mikhail, the same question to you. Is Runet unique? Can it stay unique? Well, speaking from the international platform, I can't even doubt that Runet is special, that Runet is unique. We have so much interest in the development of the internet industry in Russia from our foreign colleagues. All the statistics that you quoted only testifies to the fact. In terms of our development, we are strongly on our way. The national search engine, social media, the number of domains, we are well in the lead, and historically this had nothing to do with the attention of the state. And as to this care or attention of the state, I think that some things should be clarified. I'm a lawyer by education. The government is used to regulate into setting the norms, or the government is used to manually handling certain issues. Internet is such a complex, such a sophisticated system, and in such an environment, regulation, technical regulation, becomes a key. RFCs and other standard documents that describe the future of the internet and its development have little to do with attempts of legal regulation, because it's a different system of regulation. It's not, and the attempts to interfere into technical regulations will remind us of the attempt to change the laws of physics, the laws of nature. Technically, they are close to the laws that determine the development of systems such as internet. So to educate our colleagues in the legislative power, in the government, is something that we should focus on, and we need to promote Russian internet as a national treasure. I think that this is the right course of action for us. It would be so easy for us to lose the internet, and it takes so much effort to upkeep it. Right, thank you. Kirill, what do you think? I agree with colleagues here. I agree with you that in the Russian internet segment, There are some unique players, and the Eurozone is unique in many aspects. I believe that competition will increase. We saw several scenarios today. If the rate of growth is 25-30%, well, it cannot happen without tighter competition. And I believe that the Russian key players, like the national search engine, are under huge pressure, competitive pressure today. There is a good chance that the Russian players will maintain their positions in the market and will survive and grow. But in order to do that, everyone must play a part. The government must also contribute. The Ministry of Telecom today is putting some attention, but I don't think it's not enough attention. But anyways, they are trying to pull the graduates of the universities into the industry, but we need to double or triple the effort. We need many more young specialists in the industry. And in terms of investment, certain laws about the investment at the seed stage, well, they do not protect the investor. There are many deals that today are structured under the English law. The investor rights are always not well protected, not protected well enough under Russian laws. It's not like there is no protection at all. There is some, but it's not sufficient. Mael, what do you think? Yes, there is much room for improvement. I think that the future is in your hands. It's in our hands. The way internet will develop depends on the willingness of the government and the society and individuals and the businesses to participate in this process. The businesses must want to compete. Individuals must want or want not the regulation, and the press, mass media, they too have a say in this process. So there are some markets that are very conservative and they try to protect themselves, and then there are other markets or other players that are very much open to the international consumer. Well, it depends on us, really. It's in our hands. The future is in our hands. Alexei, I fully agree with Sergey. RUNET is a phenomenon. It's the phenomenon of planet Earth. We see the advancement of this segment of the internet. We see that the internet in Russia is growing much faster than the national economy. I think that Eurozone is the national pride. Whether our players will be able to resist along the pressure from the international majors, well, I think in the long run we will not succeed. And although I'm a market-centric person and I'm all in favor of business regulating itself, but we cannot succeed without the support of the government. I think that we are challenged by the companies that have a different order of magnitude in terms of the headcount, employees, in terms of investment, because they collect their resources, their income from so many different markets. Our country is just one country, and yes, we generate sufficient proceeds to be reinvested into the development, but all other big corporations of the world, they get their money from all around the world, not just one market. So without the government support, we will not be able to survive. The government support, when I say that, I don't mean that the market should become protectionist and that certain foreign players should never be admitted to the Russian market. That's not the way. And I think the government understands that as well. But there are certain measures, and Kirill mentioned some of them, are quite necessary. There are smart ways, soft ways to improve the competitiveness of our market, of our products, of our employees inside the country and outside of the country. It's not just a matter of business, it's a matter of the Russian sovereignty, of Russian independence, digital independence. It's a matter of global relations, and I think that the government should attend to them. Any interference of the state into the affairs of the market is often perceived as something negative. It's a painful issue, but there are always measures that can be adopted through the discussion with the community, through obtaining the consent of the community. Rostelecom, Ruslan has said that Rostelecom is involved in healthcare, and maybe I take too much offense, but as far as I understood Ruslan, he said that the large corporations are killing the market through the very harsh moves. But we must understand that big businesses and small businesses develop differently. Big businesses go into quickly growing markets, games or window frames. It's easy to make money there than in energy efficiency or geonavigation or education or healthcare. There are heavy infrastructure oriented industries, and many companies never go there for fear of not making money fast enough there. Do you know about the plans that Rostelecom has in the area of energy efficiency? I doubt it. Why? Because energy efficiency is not under the radar of the public attention. But who else if not Rostelecom, or situation centers, or control and navigation of trucks and heavy-duty machinery in the country? I don't think that many corporations would be willing to go into those fields. So I think that it's up to government corporations to set up the ecosystem and to promote infrastructural solutions that create the platform for more mobile businesses so that they can establish their growth centers in those industries and make their shareholders and the communities happy. Thank you very much, Alex.